kick us off.
Are we ready for that? Hello, good afternoon, everybody. So good to see all of you. And we'd like to thank all of you for being here on such a beautiful day in the neighborhood. And so I think we have a very exciting meeting, lots of outstanding speakers and participants. So I would like to ask Lisa to please review the webinar and public comment details at this time. Lisa?
Thank you, Ed. So I'll go ahead and go through our typical webinar and public comment details. I'm Lisa Keohokalole Schauer, one of the co-facilitators. Ed Washington, our co-chair, welcomed the Community Advisory Group. We are both short our partners during this Community Advisory Group meeting. So co-chair Lynn Valenter wasn't able to make it today, and our co-facilitator Johnell was also not able to make it today. So Ed and I will be leading us through the meeting. Our closed captions are in English and in Spanish and are available within Zoom and YouTube. And users can follow the link to view both English and Spanish captions in a separate browser window. Next slide. How to access closed captions. At the bottom middle of your screen, you should see a menu of options. If you can't see the menu, hover your mouse over the bottom middle of the screen, then click on the CC icon, and a separate window with captions will appear. In an effort to continue to center equity, we have an ASL interpreter in addition to the closed captioning. To make sure the interpreter is always visible, please right-click their video and select Spotlight Video. For those watching on YouTube, when we screen share, you will be able to see the slideshow, closed captioning, and the ASL interpreter. You will still be able to hear different people speaking, but may not be able to see them. So webinar participation tips. We appreciate you joining us today. We ask that you join either by phone or video, not both. We encourage panelists to turn your video on. Please keep your audio on mute when you're not speaking. And if you experience technical difficulties, we ask that you contact the program staff at 360-329-6744. Public input instructions. There'll be an opportunity to provide brief public input later in the meeting today. We have changed our format a bit to make it easier for the public to participate. A verbal public comment will be welcome in the Zoom webinar during the designated time, with the option to turn on your web camera. Please use the link located in the meeting description on the YouTube meeting page or on the IBR CAG meeting webpage. We will be admitting public members from outside of the Community Advisory Group around that 5:45 time period. If you do join, we will be confirming if you are outside of that Community Advisory Group, we will ask that you join closer to that 5:45 time period. To comment by phone, there's a dial-in phone number, and I will read all of those numbers as we get closer to that time period, about 5:45. If you are unable to participate in the meeting today and you'd like to provide public comment, we also really encourage you to submit a public comment via email, to leave a voicemail message, and please, if you are doing either of those two options, we ask that you ensure that you list CAG Public Comment in your email, or you make sure to leave that in your voicemail. We want to make sure that all of that information goes directly to our Community Advisory Group members, which is sent to them about 24 hours in advance of the meeting, so they have a chance to review that information prior to participating in our advisory group meetings monthly. Our CAG member commitments and operating norms. These are the operating norms that we review every meeting. We want to make sure that we are following these, and we take them very seriously. So putting relationships first, keeping focused on our common goal, noticing the power dynamics in the room, creating a space for multiple truths and norms, being kind and brave, practicing examining racially biased systems and processes, and looking for learning. All right, so we are at that point of the meeting where I think I will pass it back to Ed to go through our meeting agenda.
Okay, our agenda is pretty straightforward today. We will start it off with the program administrator, Mr. Greg Johnson, who will be giving us some updates. And that will be followed by the discussion, presentation by the advisory group members that went on the bus tour. There'll be opportunity for them to talk and share their thoughts with the public about that. And then Mr. Johnson will come back and give us some information on recommended modified LP update. And that will be followed by Salome, who will give us some information and some discussion about the fairs and festivals. She's going to update us on what's going on there. And we'll come back for, then we'll go over to Lisa for CAG discussion and feedback on next steps and future works. And then last, what's next, public comments, wrap up, and we can get you home, okay? I'd like to, at this time, ask Mr. Greg Johnson if he would be willing to step up to the microphone and let us hear his wonderful voice. Mr. Johnson.
Thank you so much, Ed. I am willing to step up to the microphone. So, well, good afternoon, everybody. The first two items on the program update, and a little bit later, I'll talk about where we are with the LPA, but there are two important issues that you need to hear about and understand, because there's some misinformation going on. So if we could go to the next slide, please. And next slide. Yep. So what, as you may have heard and seen in the press, we have received what's called a preliminary determination of clearance for a bridge permit for a new bridge over the Columbia River. So we have, this came from the US Coast Guard. We expected it. And what they have asked us to do is to build a structure or build duplicate a movable structure that has a minimum of 178 feet of clearance. So we know the last time during the CRC, we eventually reached 116 feet with some mitigation and other issues that that got us to an acceptable permit. That permit from the Coast Guard is no longer valid. So we will be going through the permit process again. This preliminary determination is the first step in the process. So we believe that we have enough information to share, enough offsetting information to share back with the Coast Guard that can get us back to the 116 feet. So we are we're working the process. We're trying to keep this a local process to reach an agreement. We're still 2 years out from when we need a Coast Guard permit, so we have time for the discussion and conversation. But as you can see by this drawing, this is the envelope that we're looking at for crossing underneath a new bridge. And this shows what 116 feet would look like. And if you see that shaded green, that shows the existing bridge height of the existing bridge. So we think that the 116 feet takes into account all users of this corridor. The Coast Guard, their charge is to look only at river traffic. They're not looking at, okay, bicycle traffic, at walkers, looking at potential light rail or trucks coming up the grade. They they're looking specifically at how can we best plan for future river traffic going through this corridor. So we have completed a river navigational study. We had done one for the CRC. We have updated it, and nothing has changed in any significant way of the users, current users and future users of this river and their needs. Now, we know we have some fabricators who have a facility on the upstream side of the river that infrequently ships out large loads that require more than 116 feet. So we are in a constant conversation with those guys to make sure we are talking to them and that we are prepared to enter into discussions to meet their needs, as well as meeting the needs of a 116-foot bridge. So we know that duplicating a lift bridge, which is one of the options that the Coast Guard initial finding put in front of us, is a tremendously tricky endeavor. We know that if it is a lift bridge, and a lift bridge is currently what's out there where the deck lifts up with counterweights and then goes back down once a large oversized river load has passed underneath it. We know that we can build lift bridges, but what we would be talking about here would be one of the largest lift bridges in the world. We know that we can build bascule bridges. Bascule bridges are the bridges that fold up and fold back down. So we have a lot of engineering expertise, but once again, building a bascule bridge at this location would be one of the largest bascule bridges in the world. So these are challenges, and you do want to be number one at certain things, but in movable bridges, you do not want to be number one because they are fraught with failure points. So we're going to have a constant conversation with the Coast Guard to talk to them about this. We also have to deal with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. So if we can go to the next slide. The Army Corps, they are responsible for the channel depth. So we would be looking at proposing with our new bridge, changing the navigational channel to accommodate getting the river traffic through the largest opening and the largest height that we would build. So there's a lot of complicated things that we're looking at. You have to have different channels. There's primary channels and alternative navigation channels. So we would be working with the U.S. Army Corps. And right now, one of the things that they have told us is they would require at minimum a 300-foot opening. This is approximately 60 feet larger than the opening that exists on the existing bridge. So these are all things that we are taking into account and having conversation. Now you will hear, and more than likely you will hear it during public comment, of folks are thinking that we are not talking to our federal partners, that we are not talking to the Coast Guard. We are talking to them on a regular basis. We understand their needs, and we understand what we have to demonstrate to them to get to a final permit. So this is one of the key issues that we will be working through as we move into the next phase of this project. So we will be also talking next week, if everything goes well, and about another hour and a half, we will have the final partner board and council approval to move forward. And so that means next week we will be talking to the executive steering group and the bi-state legislative group on the same day, a week from today, to get their final approval to approve the locally preferred alternative, which moves us into the next phase of the project. So I'll talk about that a little bit later, but just letting you know that all of these things and some of the misinformation that you hear constantly, we have heard it. We are miles ahead of what folks think we are as far as thinking about the grades on the bridge, thinking about phasing of this project. These are things that we are having constant conversations internally about. So, but at that, I'll take any questions you may have on the Coast Guard and the proposed navigation channel. So,
are there
I
any
see
questions?
Dina, Bill, then Martha, then Sam. So Dina.
Thank you. If you could go back to slide, I think it's number 12.
Okay.
That
Who is
shows
my
the
slide
image.
master?
There you go. So is that 300-foot opening from piling to piling, or is there some additional clearance from where the 300 is to where the pilings would be to allow for sort of like advanced maintenance dredging that would be needed to maintain the channel depth for ships passing under the bridge?
So the 300 feet is the envelope, and I think there's a requirement to have 50 additional feet between any obstruction or pier in the water. So
Okay.
the true opening would be 400 feet. That is
Okay.
currently what the best information that we have from the U.S. Army Corps at this point of what we would need to satisfy navigational channel requirements.
Excellent. Thank you. That when I see the 300 period, it gives me a moment for pause. So I appreciate the clarification. Thank you.
Okay. Bill.
Yes, thank you. Hey, just a clarification too for me. I think I heard you, but I'm not sure I heard you right. You said that the Coast Guard had originally said it needed to be 178 feet. Is that what you said?
That is what their preliminary determination, the letter that they sent to us earlier this month, or last month rather, says. 178 feet, which means either we're building an extremely tall fixed bridge, or we're building a movable bridge or bridge with a movable span.
Okay, but what the drawing that we saw there was 116 feet. So that's 62 feet difference.
Yes.
That's a hell of a lot of difference. Anyway, what is the current height of the bridge now that when it's totally raised as high as it can go?
It is 178 feet.
Oh, okay. Okay, that's all I wanted to know. Thank you.
All right. Martha.
Yeah, going back to that screen, the screen number 12 we were just looking at, and this isn't about the height exactly, except that when we were on our tour, you talked about how it was going to be raised above where it is now, but it will be level and join into the existing freeway at Evergreen Boulevard. And this diagram doesn't show.
Hold on one second. I'm moving my icon so I can see the right side of the screen. So this is an approximation. By the time we chase grade, we think that we would be coming to grade right around Evergreen. I don't think this shows the rail crossing. I don't think I see it on here, but that's another element that we have to span over, and that takes us further north before we can touch down. So these are the threading of the needle issues that we've been talking about And this is an approximation. We don't have the final grades yet, but right now, from what our designers tell us, is that we would be touching down somewhere near evergreen as we go back down to grade of the existing freeway.
Thank you.
All right, Sam.
The Columbia River crossing, Coast Guard permitted 116 foot. Is that correct? And
Yeah, during CRC, they gave us a permit for 116 feet.
and that permit has expired. I understand that. So now
Yes.
they're going back to 178 foot. Is Coast Guard expecting a different argument, or I mean, like you said, nothing's changed. The multimodal transportation. They're only looking. Coast Guard's only looking at the river traffic, but we have to look at the whole totality of the traffic. I would think that CRC's argument is still valid for IBR, and we're going to be making the exact same argument, so the history repeats itself. So is Coast Guard just expecting us to make the exact same arguments, and they're going to go ahead and rubber stamp this, or what's going on?
So the Coast Guard, their processes have changed slightly to where they have to address this issue as we are in this phase of the project. But the arguments, because nothing has significantly changed in the river user's profile, the arguments are going to be very similar. Before they acknowledged that we could mitigate for the businesses that had a need upstream, this time they are not acknowledging that mitigation. So that's a change in their processes, but the arguments are going to be the same. And you folks have heard me say there's only so many ways to build a bridge and move both river traffic and traffic over it. And we have limitations. We have to touch down on Hayden Island. We have to SR 14 is critical and one of the biggest drivers of traffic coming into this corridor. So to not have that connection would not meet the purpose and need of this program. So a lot of the arguments are going to be the same.
Well, so Coast Guard knows all that because they heard all those arguments previously. So I guess every time I read it in the paper, I'm going, are they going to really stop this project and not permit it? I mean, is there even a chance of that? If there isn't a chance of that, sounds like they might be just putting up a token, I guess, objections or token requirements that they know they're going to be knocked down.
Well, and I can't speak for the Coast Guard. I know they're very earnest and they take their duties very seriously. But once again, they are looking at one element while we have to look at numerous elements. So we're gonna get back to them. We're gonna have this conversation and make sure they understand what the trade-offs are. We know that building a bascule bridge or building a lift bridge is going to be approximately $500 million additional cost to the program. And the last time we did mitigation, we were in the ballpark of less than $85 million in mitigation costs. So, and plus, if you have a movable span, you now have additional costs every year that will have to be accounted for to operate that span.
Right.
So those are the things that we're gonna put on the table for the Coast Guard, and we're gonna continue the conversation. Like I said, people of goodwill can find a way to reach an answer, and we think that the Coast Guard has goodwill, and we know that we have goodwill, so we can find an answer to this.
Well, thank you. Let me know how we can help.
Will do. Thank you. Any further questions?
Sorry, I didn't put my hand up, but I do. What is the height of the 205 bridge?
The 205 bridge is approximately 100 and I want to say 160 some odd feet. So
Okay.
it is not as high as the potential of the existing lift span, but it's fairly close. So we'll check that number and make sure, but I believe it's in the range of between 160, 170 feet.
Okay, I was just wondering the comparison there. And of course, they don't probably have as many of the larger companies further up the river than they do down here. So,
okay, well, why don't we go to the program area bus tour? Ed, I'll kick it back over to you.
I think sorry, one follow-up. I think there was one other area to discuss, Greg, which was the upcoming ESG and bi-state legislative committee meetings. But Ed, you had your hand up. So were you wanting to speak to the Coast Guard letter before we transition to the other meetings?
Not so much the letter, but I was just curious about the upstream heavy equipment traffic. What's the anticipation? I know about the one place that sent a lot of heavy stuff. Is there anticipation that there will be lots of others in the future or several others in the future?
So currently we have had 3 different entities that produce loads over the last number of years that have required lifts higher than 116 feet. And those have been far and few in between. And I'm gonna say a number, but we are chasing down the exact number. Right now, we are between 8 and 12 loads over the last 40 years that have required lifts more than 116. So we will verify that number, but that's all of the indication that we have right now. So we're talking about that many loads over a 40-year time period. So we think we can find a better and a different and a cheaper way to accommodate that. So Robin, I see you have a hand up.
Yeah, Greg, is the Coast Guard's recent ruling consistent with what they've done on other major navigable rivers throughout the country, or is this somehow different or unique?
So their most recent comparison is what has happened on I-95 over the Potomac River. For those of you who are familiar with Washington, there were naval shipyards that moved large vessels in and out. Now, my understanding is that is not the case anymore, but for future, they still wanted I-95 over the Potomac River in the Washington, D.C. area to have either a very high bridge, which would have been disruptive to the communities and historical properties on either side of the river, or they wanted it to be a bascule bridge. So they ended up building a bascule bridge after years of back and forth. That was completed back in the mid 2000s, I believe. And it's once again one of the last, along with our bridge, one of the last remaining movable spans on the interstate system. So that was, the context there is vastly different. They do not have light rail going across that bridge. They do not have bicycles. Our bridge will while they carry more traffic, we have much more interchanges. And so we will have probably a larger width overall for our needs to cross than what happened in in Washington, D.C. with the Woodrow Wilson Bridge.
Yep. Thanks, Greg.
Bill, I wanted to follow up with you. It's awesome to be virtual because you can phone a friend during the middle of a meeting. So our environmental lead, Angela, says the I-205 bridge is 135 feet.
135.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Okay.
So I think we have another argument.
So Greg, do you want to mention before maybe we transition over to Ed a little bit about the upcoming ESG and bi-state legislative committee meetings?
Yeah, I spoke a little bit about it, but yeah, next Thursday we will be before, in the morning, it will be the executive steering group, which we will hope to receive their endorsement on the locally preferred alternative. We've been before all of the boards and councils of those partners, and the last one is happening just about as we speak. So the RTC board is the last board to act on this LPA. And after that, the afternoon will be spent with the bi-state legislative group, and they will be acknowledging all of the work and the alignment between the partners. And once again, give us the acknowledgement to move forward into the next phase of the program. So Lisa, was there anything else you wanted me to cover on that?
Nope, I think that's it.
All
Big
right.
day.
So,
All right, Ed.
Hey, thank you, Mr. Johnson, for that presentation. And I was asked to say a few words about the bus tour. And I think that for me, I hope I summed it up when I made a comment that really taking that tour and being there, you know, a picture just to see is worth 1,000 words, but to just be there where all of that traffic, I don't know what it was. First off, it was such a horrible day. The trip wasn't horrible, but the weather was horrible. And we got rained on later on, but just standing there on the Oregon side, watching that traffic, or maybe we're on the Washington side, and just watching that traffic plow through there, it just, for me, it just made all the difference in the world. And I just came away from that with a totally different feeling about everything that you all are putting into trying to make this a success, and all of the hard work and all of the meetings and all of the political stuff and the new stuff. And you know, when it all comes out in the wash, all people are trying to do is really build a bridge to move that traffic. And I think my drive after the meeting, I had to go to dinner over in Portland, and I just have never ran into so much freeway fog between Vancouver and Portland. I mean, it was horrible to drive back over to Portland, and people were just going past me doing 75 miles an hour. I was trying to take it easy, but I just would like to turn the floor over to the members of the CAG and anyone who have any comments about the trip and their feelings about it, if it was really worthwhile. Should we do more trips and things of this nature as we move forward? I sure hope that you would feel free to share that with the members. And so I'm just going to throw it open for the CAG members to have some input, and then thank everybody who put the trip together, Jason and Greg and Johnell and Lisa and everyone else. And I probably always miss a name, but thank you all for doing that. It was just, I think, I think it was one of the highlights for me. Sitting in meetings are okay, but being out there in the real world makes a huge difference. So I would like to just turn it over to other members of the CAG, and I hope that you will feel free to give your thoughts, express yourself. That's it. Thank you.
Looks like we have Martha, Sam, and then Tom.
Yeah, the one thing, I mean, I already mentioned about the evergreen coming into to evergreen, but when we were on Hayden Island and we were in the ODOT parking lot there, and you were talking about how we needed to drill a 10-foot wide hole down hundreds of feet, and then I assume you're going to eventually fill it up with concrete. I just was thinking about the truck trips involved with hauling away all that dirt and hauling in all that concrete. It was mind-boggling to me to think about that. And so I had never considered that particular element of this, but I am looking forward to hearing more in the future about the construction impacts of this bridge.
So yes, the enormity, the massiveness, how ginormous this thing is, I think just came to fruition for me. But to answer Ed's question, yes, it was definitely worth it. Remember, as CAG members, this was our first face-to-face meeting, and I think it did double duty for you. One, I got to meet everybody in person who was there. And two, yes, we should do more of these things because just realizing what a huge, huge project this is, what a huge impact. And when Ed said, there's a fog of traffic between Portland and Vancouver, some of us experience that daily. So, it's it's not just once in a few days in a month or a year event. It's a constant event. So I think this is just a tremendous effort. It requires unified will from all the players here, and the fact that Coast Guards and others can throw up roadblocks, and we're optimistic that we can get over that. That's great, and I'd be happy to help in any way. So I'm happy with the progress that's being made with all the other agencies, and the fact that some of them were able to join on this field trip. Got to know us, got to know them. I think that was really great. It'll be wonderful if we could continue to expand that and build on that and learn more about what we are advising on as a community group here. Thank you.
Guess that leaves me next. I thought it was very valuable. However, I was disappointed that we did not get out of the buses at Marine Drive interchange, because that's obviously an issue that's one that I really want to get into the weeds on as much as possible. And literally prepared to get out in the weeds on that one. So there were a lot of topics about that particular interchange I would have appreciated having more chance to dig deep on, and we didn't get to, I guess because it was raining at that point and nobody wanted to get out of the bus. So that's what I got.
Thanks, Tom. I see Robin's hands up, and I think we were also looking at the time. So the idea of a follow-up, I think, has already surfaced because we weren't able to maybe accomplish everything during the time that we had promised to bring everyone back to the IBR office. But Robin, please share any feedback that you might have as well.
Yeah, thanks. I would first echo that it would be nice to have future tours, especially dealing with specific issues and projects that we're considering at the time. It really does help translate from what we see on graphic designs on screens. And it gave us all a better understanding of the reasons for things. For example, like the tunnel. I mean, if you really think about it, where it was explained to us that the tunnel exit on the Vancouver side would really be at Evergreen or Mill Plain, even that far up. And you can better understand it once you see that when you're standing there in person and you see the logistics that have to be navigated of the various structures and things. It is, I think, as somebody said, like threading a needle, and it's a very complex threading of a needle in addition to that. So it was really a great perspective, because I think many of us have to relay what's going on to other organizations, whether it's the business community or others that like I do. And having that experience, that tour, gave me a better opportunity to actually explain in more practical terms what I see on a design board from my experience with the tour. So I really appreciated it, in addition to being able to see everybody in person as well.
And if I can take a moment just to say, I enjoyed the tour tremendously. Number one, it was good to meet folks in person. And we know that we're going to do more of these, because it was very impactful for our team as well. Because sometimes, as professionals who have done this, we become a little bit jaded as to some of the complexities. But in hearing CAG members reflect back to us how complex this thing is, it does make you take a step back. So thank you for all of those who took the time. And I see, Marcus, you have your hand up. So I'll flip it over to you.
Okay. Yeah, I echo a lot of the comments that people made. And I did appreciate being on the tour. That was good. And I think, I don't see her on the call tonight. I think Jasmine from the NAACP was real important in helping us get that going. So I appreciated that. But, on the next tour, I would like to see a few more community members, because a couple of the people that were from the Vancouver side, this committee's had some contention here and there, and they mentioned, when we were at the Clark College site, oh, well, here's some other impacts of that that we weren't hearing maybe from, well, let me back up a little bit. I appreciated the comments of the CTRAN CEO who was there. He gave some good clarification, and the other main person who was talking, which, geez, I forgot now, but they were talking about the city, CTRAN, and I did hear something there from the CTRAN guy, and I forgot his name. I'm sorry to keep
Sean Donahue.
Yeah, Sean, about what I hadn't heard before with respect to the BRT was that they're going to have kind of that on-demand kind of facet of the buses for that section that I was really worried about, which had a lot of low income and people of color. And while that might not be a perfect solution, that was kind of the first time I had heard a solution about that. So I appreciated that. But then towards the end of the tour, I had to sit with him in the back of the bus and say, look, everything you've said so far has just been perfect and wonderful and rosy. And not that I want to go on a negative bus tour, but I want to hear the balance. I want to hear what else could go wrong, even though you had some mitigating things. So, and I think by having all that to say, I think by having not only CAG members and members from your group, but by having a few more, for lack of a better word, random community members who actually take the bus and take the trains and, have them come with us. And I wanted to be able to hear some of those things that the people that stand out in the rain, because I'm with Bill. I wouldn't have minded going out there in the rain and looking at the site. That wouldn't have been a big deal. I mean, with Tom, sorry, Tom. I wouldn't have minded standing out there in the rain, just checking it out while we were there. But either way, maybe just add a few community members, make it available to them. So, a third or something like that. The people talking about it, CAG or EAG members, and maybe community, because I want people who live it. I don't live that transit model every day. I wanted a few people who live the model. I know Sam drives across every day, but who live the public transit model to be on that tour and tell us what we're missing. So sorry for all that, but and Sean agreed that, yeah, there are some hitches and glitches and things like that. But again, on balance, it still sounded good. So.
Excellent. Well, we're open to shaping another tour. So all of these comments and maybe making the tour less expansive to focus on a couple of areas and get those done thoroughly. We will task Jason with with taking the comments and as we shape the next tour.
Okay.
So,
Lisa?
Yeah, I was going to say, I think Greg could back up again. If there's no other feedback on the tour, I just really wanted to also express my gratitude for all the effort to put the tour together. I think it, to Sam's point, was our first opportunity as community advisory group members to actually meet each other in person. And that was pretty exciting to be able to have that opportunity. I also wanted to thank Robin for your participation at the ESG and to provide context to that group as to how the tour went. I think that really provided them an opportunity to hear from you. So Ed, you're kind of flashing your hand up at me like, hey, I want to talk, so I'm going to pass it over to you. I am picking up what you're putting down.
That wasn't the reason. I was just clicking the button, not reading correctly. I just want to say to Marcus that I really appreciate his comments about the community people, and I think that's absolutely correct. We do need to make sure that we get some of those people who really are the users. But I also wanted to say that I appreciate it so very much, the bus company in Vancouver. I want to say TriMet, it's not TriMet, but I really appreciated all of their conversations and their courtesies of showing us and explaining to us. It made a huge difference for me. So thank you very much. That's all. And I'm going to lower my hand now. All right. Okay, I'm finished.
Okay.
all right, well, so I think I am up next to give you an update on our partners, the boards and councils, and what we are hearing from. So
Greg?
if we can.
Greg, just 1 second. Lisa, Greg, and Ed, if I could, I may just ask to modify our agenda very slightly. We want to talk about our fairs and festivals and community engagement. And Salome, who is here right now and able to do that, but has to leave early for an unavoidable, and because we're running a few minutes behind. Greg, would you be willing to flop and put our fairs and festivals right now and do the LPA right after?
I'm good with that, Jason.
Great. Thank you so much. So Salome.
Hello, everyone. It's been a while since I've been able to see you all or hear from you all in terms of actually being able to communicate. So again, my name is Salome or Salome. My pronouns are she, her, and I work with the comms team and the community engagement team and the equity team. And I just wanted to give you a brief snippet of the fairs and festivals that we have been working on this summer. So next slide, please. And so here you see a timeline of the different fairs and festivals that we have participated in and plan to participate in. So through the weekend of June 25th and 26th, we were at Good in the Hood on the Portland side. Then on July 9th, we were at Vancouver Pride. We plan to go to future events such as Alberta last Thursday, Vancouver's Farmers Market, as well as the King Farmers Market. And you can see two images here. I think both of those are actually from Vancouver Pride, of us talking and engaging with community members. Next slide, please. And so from these fairs and festivals, the major part of it is to gain some insight on the public's perception, their concerns, and also hear what they liked as well. And so for many community members, this is their first time interacting with the program. With our community engagement efforts, we try to make sure that we not only ask people to come to our tables, but we go to their tables as well, or go find them where they are living their life. And so many community members had questions about the foundational elements of the modified LPA and the next steps. And there were some common themes that we as staff were hearing, such as keep centering equity, I hope it happens this time was a very strong sentiment. When I was looking, and there's people who shared their experience with us. So we got also some really great insight for hearing from folks who actually commute and commute via public transit or by car, and hearing comments such as, when I was looking for housing, the existing bridge impacted my decision. Well, we also heard that I'm glad that Max will have stops in Vancouver. A lot of folks just kind of walked by and yelled, "Build the bridge," which was pretty fun, and keep up the good work. And so with these conversations that we had, we plan to fold them into our feedback that we present to you all and the other advisory groups, as well as collect stories of folks who use the commute on a daily basis or used to commute on a daily basis, and to really help us get a broader picture of how people use and interact with the bridge. And so I think that is it for my slides. And so I'm happy to answer any questions that people have, but also send an invitation to you as CAG members that if you see us at one of these events, please stop by and say hi. It is really nice to see familiar faces as well as talk to new people. Yes, Greg.
Thanks, Salome.
Are we tracking how many folks we're interacting with at these events?
Yes, and so we have a tally sheet that we use to track the amount of interactions that we're having. We also have on that sheet a space for us to capture quotes. And then we have our comment cards for folks who want to just write comments. We have been doing a bit more of the getting bridge stories from individuals. And so we've interviewed people that walked past the booth that were willing to be interviewed, and collected contact information of others so they can participate in future focus groups or get our newsletter. And so we definitely keeping track of those numbers, and each of these events that we've been at, Vancouver Pride as well as Good in the Hood, had hundreds of people walk by, and I can't tell you how many conversations I had. There were just too many for me to think off the top of my head, but we do have that running tally.
Excellent.
Are you hearing anyone say, "Oh, I don't know anything about this project"?
I think we are hearing that in terms of people who are like, I've heard whispers or just random snippets from the news, but I haven't been following the project. A lot of the folks were in that kind of area or fell into that area. Other folks, a lot of the comment that we heard was just not knowing how they can engage with the project or knowing that there was room for them to engage the project. And so giving them a lot of information around CAG meetings, EAG meetings, ESG meetings, as well as by state, and information on our hopes in the future do focus groups and the newsletter. And so had a couple of conversations not in English, but we worked through those as well. And I think overwhelmingly people just were happy to hear that there was a role for them to play and that we were inviting them to give us their comment.
Great. Tom.
Thanks. Do you have like harder statistics on the kinds of feedback comments you got? I know you've got sort of common themes, but that sort of, I hate to say it, sort of feels like cherry picking because they're all positive comments. And I'm wondering if there were statistically negative comments or pushback conversations that you also had.
I would say that there wasn't honestly a lot of huge negative comments. Most of them were just, I would put it as jadedness to whether or not this project will actually happen. That was kind of the sentiment, but it was paired with please replace that bridge. So there wasn't a lot of people like yelling or trying to cuss me out while standing at the booth. It was mostly just, I really want this bridge to happen. I really want light rail. Please make it happen. So I would say that they were negative comments that were paired with positive outcomes and remarks. There wasn't really anyone harping on anything in particular, but we do have, if you'd like, Tom, the ability to gather all those notes together and present it or send it out to you all in a more number crunching way.
It would be interesting, but I wanted your sense of it in terms of what you just said, was whether there was a faction amongst the general community that was giving you the pushback, because there's a very vocal faction out there, but it's hard to know how much they represent percentage-wise of the general population.
Yeah, and I'm glad that you said that, Tom, because one thing I do want to point out is that by nature, human beings definitely hear anger and aggression louder than they hear compliments. And so one negative voice can be a lot louder than 18 voices of positivity. And so when we're out there, again, most of the sentiment was just that was not happy, was just like really wanting this to happen. And definitely a lot more negative comments in regards to specifically government and feeling like the government has failed to replace the bridge. And so that was kind of the only negative feedback that I got. But again, it came from a place of please build the bridge.
Great, thank you.
Martha?
I am happy that you are representing the bridge in Vancouver, but both of your Vancouver locations are at Esther Short Park, both in the heart of the city of Vancouver. And I expect that people who live in the city of Vancouver are very much in favor of this bridge and very much in favor of light rail. My thought is, if you plan to take the roadshow sort of to places in East County or North County, Clark County, that is, or if you're going to be focused more on Vancouver, because that is the bridge area itself.
Thank you, Martha. You kind of just read my brain, so thank you for that very softball to this next point. So the community engagement team is definitely committed to being out there in more areas, also giving presentations to community-based organizations as well as neighborhood associations moving forward. These 4 events were kind of picked as to test pilot us being at events that weren't put on by us, and how that would work, and what works best, and what kind of information people wanted. And so I think as we gather more information from these experiences, that'll help us decide on, okay, where is the next space that we need to go? So thank you for that. And we definitely are keeping that in mind when we're looking forward to future events.
As members of the community, this is a great opportunity for you to help encourage folks to find the program at these big open public spaces. So I think as we continue to push out information in terms of media clippings, we can also make sure that you know where Salome and the community engagement team will be, especially as they start to plan kind of where next summer's fairs and festivals might be. And how that might expand, so that this is really kind of living that commitment of showing up and doing community engagement where folks are, as opposed to expecting the community to show up where we are. So I really appreciate all of your leadership in this area, Salome. It's been fun to see, especially as you engage in social media, the response and seeing folks out there.
Yeah, definitely working towards making sure that people have their questions answered. And so if there's anything else you all think of later, please feel free to reach out to me at any time, and I'll be more than happy to answer your questions.
Okay. Thank you very much, Solano.
All right, I think back to you, Greg.
Okay.
All right.
I do want to thank Salome before she fully exits. These are folks who are working on weekends, who are working off hours to do this and answer questions and show a face for the program. And if folks have different ideas of places where we can be, let us know. It's my hope as that I can be at some of these events, because once again, I like a good fair or festival. So, all right. Let's talk real quick about where we are with the modified LPA. So let's go to the next slide. We have been, since we rolled out the LPA in early May, we have been talking to a number of partners and other entities about what the LPA is, what it isn't, and hearing their comments before their boards and councils took final vote. So we have been before Portland City Council, and some of the things that we heard is that they want to understand better what the finance plan is. They want to understand what an estimate will look like. But they also were interested in looking at urban design and looking at aesthetics and how we are going to make this bridge more environmentally friendly. So some very good comments. We've met with some sub committees of the Portland City Council, the bike, the freight committee at the City of Portland. So it's been a robust conversation. Metro Council, we met with them probably 5 or 6 times over the last 3 months. And their concerns are making sure the bridge is right size. They're concerned about a larger bridge inducing traffic and the environmental impacts of that. So equity is still a key issue for Metro Council, and variable rate tolling and demand management, along with providing good options for folks to get out of their vehicles and reduce vehicle miles traveled. Vancouver City Council, once again, they were interested in how these interchanges are going to impact the city and access to the downtown. They're also concerned about, are we building or are we proposing too small of a bridge with only one auxiliary lane? So they were concerned about freight accommodation and, once again, the number of lanes. And finally, equity was also brought up at the City of Vancouver, and look at tangible outcomes for equity. So we were before the TriMet board, and they were very complimentary of the partnership and the work that's being done with CTRAN and the partnership with the program. And they also had concerns about the finance plan, how the operations of expanded light rail will be paid for. So that's an ongoing conversation. Next slide, please. So the RTC Board of Directors, once again, they looked at tolling, how costs will be shared on either side of the river. The auxiliary lanes was another issue that they wanted to make sure was being highlighted. Economic development opportunities, including making sure that workforce development programs, as well as small business and minority and women-owned businesses have their share of work for the program. And they also mentioned community benefits, issues that are not traditionally transportation related, but are important to the community that will be looked at during this program. The Port of Portland, there once again, they talked about the access to and from Marine Drive and how we will make sure that freight needs going into the future are addressed, centering equity. The Port of Vancouver, once again, wanted to make sure that if one auxiliary lane does not serve the future needs of this corridor, that we have the ability to look at 2 auxiliary lanes or other designs that will address those concerns. So they also spoke about making sure this bridge has a smart technology, and that that we are future looking to make sure that we can mitigate future impacts in a very structured and smart way. CTRAN, once again, they wanted to understand the funding plan for ongoing operations and maintenance of any light rail extension. So let's go to the next slide, please. So after all of those preliminary conversations, we have a schedule for the boards and councils who were doing the endorsing of the modified locally preferred alternative. And this is that schedule. So we are through the 14th. We actually, Metro Council went before the RTC Board of Directors, and that meeting is just starting. So we have received the endorsement of 7 of the 8 partner boards or councils, and with some overwhelmingly positive votes, a lot of unanimous votes. And I think at last count, the tally was 47 to 3 or 4, 47 positive votes against 3 or 4 negative votes. So let's go to the next slide, please. So once again, we've been telling folks that this is just a foundation of what to study in the supplemental environmental impact statement. And this is not the final design. We will be developing more details as we move through that supplemental environmental impact statement process. But what we also heard from the boards and councils, they are developing a list of commitments that they want us to include, study, give them feedback on. So once again, some of the key areas included active transportation, making sure that we have great connections to the light rail stations. Sustainability and climate has been a key element that we've heard commitments on. So once again, prioritizing that sustainable design and construction practices, as well as building a bridge that is respectful of environment, and making sure that we are not burdening the next generations with something that will be increasing greenhouse gas emissions going forward. We also heard that they want to develop a community benefits program. So we are in the initial stages of having that conversation. The contracting and construction, setting targets. We know that we are not in charge of the target setting for DBE utilization. That is a federal process that, but we will be able to have impact in groups such as CAG and such as EAG will be able to make their comments heard in that process. So next slide, please. So other commitments, folks want to see an aesthetically pleasing bridge, cost efficient and sustainable. They want to make sure that we have accountability tracking tools for equity commitments. The finance plan has been on the tip of the brain for a lot of folks. We know that before the end of the year, we will have a revised finance plan, which will refine costs that will be based upon the locally preferred alternative. And as we are refining designs, will be based on those refined designs. So we will also be looking at what the funding elements could possibly bring to this program. So we heard on the freight, once again, ensuring that the auxiliary lanes interchanges meet future freight needs. Tolling, the equity issues around tolling are key critical for our partners. And transit, making sure we are working with the partner agencies to optimize the transit network. So next slide, please. So with that, I'll take any questions that the group may have on what we have heard from our partners. and from the boards and councils as we are on the precipice of getting this locally preferred alternative moved to the next stage. So I see Robin, you have a hand up, then Martha.
Yeah, hey, Greg, I just want to congratulate you and your team for what you guys have achieved over the last couple of weeks. It's the result of a tremendous amount of work, and neither of these groups are very easy to convince. And you guys achieved a very successful, crossed some very successful milestones. I know this was a big deal, and you're not making a big deal about it, but it is a big deal because we all know that negative votes on this, overwhelming negative votes, would throw a big problem into this project. So congratulations to you and the team on successfully crossing some other milestones. And I know there's a lot of work ahead. There's a lot more milestones ahead, but you got to celebrate every one of them when you do it, or it doesn't mean anything. So congratulations.
Well, Robin, thank you for those comments. And you're right, the team has been working extremely hard. Just the logistics of setting up the meetings with boards and councils was a major undertaking, and things were changing minute by minute, but the team hung in there to get stuff done. But I do agree, we should not downplay the significance of getting alignment in this region for this project to move to that next phase. It doesn't mean we don't have a lot of hard work in front of us, but this was a major, major step forward. So, Martha.
Yeah, I was wondering how you are keeping track of organizations and agencies who are opposed to the bridge, that may not be permitting, they may not have any authority over the bridge, but they like, what comes to mind is Clark County Council's resolution last week about requiring that the county vote on light rail before they will allow it. They're anticipating negative vote in that. So I just wondered what your thoughts were about these other organizations who aren't directly part, but still they're in the area sort of, and they're involved in some way, even though they may not have a permit or approval.
So Martha, we are listening very carefully to others who may not be direct partners, but who are important to the decisions moving forward. So I have personally had conversations with members of the Clark County Council, and we will continue to have those conversations. We've talked to the communities that lay outside of the city of Vancouver. We've had conversations with them to explain what this is and what it isn't, because those voices are important in the conversation as well. So on the Portland side, we've talked to communities. We've talked to Gresham. We've talked to folks in Washington County. So yeah, we're listening to all of these folks and making sure that we are hearing their input. And even though they don't have a voting position on this, we are listening and making sure that their comments are reflected in the work that we're doing. So it's a good point, and we are listening, and we will continue as we move into this next phase. Okay, any other questions or concerns regarding where we're at with the locally preferred alternative? All right, seeing none, we have a smooth handoff to Lisa, who is going to seamlessly talk about what's next. So Lisa.
Thanks, Greg. Well, so we're interested in kind of just an open conversation. So as Greg mentioned, kind of what's next, future discussion, discussion on future work. So in particular, program commitments in terms of how the priorities of this modified LPA kind of aligns with those CAG values and priorities that we've put in place. Any input that you have in terms of areas of focus for future work. I think as a program, pretty proud of where the program is in this moment. And there's an opportunity to start to work through all of those key components that will make up this kind of next phase as we go into this next environmental phase. So looking for feedback. So this is the opportunity for you to share if there's anything that you feel compelled to want to make sure that we know as we're going to take a break in August. So we'll be doing some work planning, and then we'll be back together in September, and we'll be able to provide a little bit more insight as to what the work plan for the rest of the year looks like as we move through the agenda, and we send that out to you early September. But what feedback do you have? What input do you want to have in terms of setting that prioritization for the future work of CAG in this next phase of environmental work?
So Lisa, if I see nobody's putting a hand up, so I'll throw some red meat out there for folks to react to. We know one of the key things that's coming up is that we're going to be having some community benefits discussions. And so for those of you who are unfamiliar with community benefits in a transportation project, these are things that sometimes are unrelated to transportation, but they do have a nexus to the community and project impacts to the community. So we will be asking in the future some members of CAG, some members of EAG to sit on a working group that will be the foundation of a community benefits team. So this will be a broad group. We know that we will have a labor component that may be a separate discussion, but to talk about labor and workforce. But those are some of the things. But Tom, I see you have a hand up, so I'll stop and I'll let you guys tell us what you want to see.
Well, I was interested in hearing more about that, but no, I think what I would like to see a focus on going forward is the details of how the bridge interacts with the community at the interchange level. I'm not qualified to have an opinion about the engineering of the bridge itself, but I do want to have a voice in terms of how you get on and off the bridge at Marine Drive and Hayden Island. And I'm sure the people in Vancouver have similar feelings about their interchanges as well. And so as those details become something that we can talk about, I definitely want to be there to see that conversation happens and it's a two-way street, because obviously it's a delicate balance between the needs of the local residents, the needs of the freight community. All these things have to find a working solution. And one of the things that we're really focused in on in the Bridgeton neighborhood is how does the Marine Drive interchange play nicely with PBOT's plans for the region, and all these things that are to do an integrated holistic plan that extends outside perhaps the bridge influence area itself, but is integrated well into the larger planning of the city's needs.
Thomas, it's a great point and an excellent question. So one of the things that we have as a part of our team, we have urban design expertise. And so you're going to start seeing in this next phase some of the details of how you integrate some of the facets of this program, how you connect to the community without it just being dumping folks off onto local streets. So you're going to see design elements, urban treatments that will hopefully make this a better, smarter bridge and a better asset for the community. So all of those things will be part of urban design discussions that will be going on during this next phase. So our grand hope is that once again, we will have working groups that will have CAG members, EAG members that will help be able to bring conversations from the CAG to these working groups and vice versa. So that's our grand hope. But yeah, we know that we can't just plop a bridge down in the middle of a community and not have it meet the context of what folks want to see, the tie-ins to their communities.
Well, and I think, Tom, we saw Patrick start to share a bit during the bus tour about what some of the city's vision was and how it integrated. And so I think what you're also speaking to is seeing more of that. So we'll make a note, because I think that that's probably beneficial for a broader group that maybe wasn't able to even attend the tour to start to understand how we stitch that together. And we have those partners actively involved in the IBR program.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would point out that that's not a one-time conversation. That's a long-term, for the duration kind of conversation.
Right. Okay, so we have Darcy, Sam, Bill, and Robin. So Darcy.
Yeah, thanks. Greg, I was actually wondering, going back to the conversation around a new working group around community benefits agreements, do you have any sort of timeline on when that group may take shape and begin to have that conversation?
Darcy, that's a great question. We have been trying to get through this modified locally preferred alternative, and we are having conversations with both DOTs, because the TOTs are going to be the ultimate signatories and responsible for making sure that agreements through a community benefits agreement get done as part of this project. So we're going to be talking to the DOTs. We're hoping later this fall to start standing that group up and having meetings and robust conversations before the year is out. So right now, we've preliminarily asked Mayor Ann McInerney Ogle to sit as one co-chair, and we've asked Commissioner Hardesty to sit as the other co-chair. So we haven't finalized all of the details yet, but we're starting to put the framework together to get this move forward.
Wonderful. Thanks, Greg.
So I have more of a question. I'd be very much interested in what does a smart bridge look like? I'm assuming the current bridge is not very smart at all.
It is.
So I imagine it's a lot smarter than that.
So
go ahead.
So some of the technology that you will see is that the bridge will be able to talk to smart vehicles and tell smart vehicles, you need to move into a different lane because there's an incident in front of you. The bridge will be able to report to both Salem and to Olympia that, well, there's a crack developing in my deck. You need to get someone out here to seal that crack. That's the type of technology that you're seeing being implemented and being talked about for future, both operational, how you move traffic, having the ability to move traffic instantaneously once there is an incident, rather than waiting for law enforcement to come out and close a lane. You can do it via technology on the bridge that will be controlled from a operations center. So things like that can move traffic, that can synchronize ramp metering signals that are smarter than the ramp meters that we currently have. Those are some of the things that we will be looking forward to including on this bridge.
I like it. So maybe even talking to Google Maps that will do the traffic direction as well. Because I swear in the Bay Area, Google Maps does traffic engineering.
Well, Google has been a partner with a number of DOTs because of their self-driving vehicles. So we know that we will be having technology that will accommodate self-driving vehicles and things of that nature. So yeah, those will be conversations that will be happening as we move forward. We have WSP, who is our general engineering consulting firm, has some of the worldwide thought leaders on smart infrastructure, smart technology for transportation. So we will be pulling on those folks to help us think about what's good and useful going into the future for this bridge.
I'd definitely be interested in working on being on that work group if there is going to be one.
Okay.
And then the community benefits program, just real quick so that others can talk here. I'm thinking of like transit pass, toll transponder credits and things like that. Is that kind of what you're thinking of for a community benefits program?
That may be some of it. Some of that will get wrapped into, because our program doesn't control the tolling issues. That will be part of the conversation with the Oregon Transportation Commission and the Washington State Transportation Commission, who oversees tolling policy. But we will be able to make recommendations to them about how to make this bridge work in an equitable way for the community. So we will be looking at different examples around the country and around the world to make sure we're getting the best and most equitable outcomes for this.
Well, between Smart Bridge and Community Benefits Program, I think this will be real exciting for everybody.
This is the fun stuff that's coming up. This is, some of this stuff was, kind of dry, kind of process oriented. I think the next phase is you're going to see the creativity phases coming out. So,
Bill?
Okay, thanks. I think we answered most of it, so I won't be too long. But in your conversation with Tom and the design elements and reaching out to other parts, I'm assuming that includes the I-5 Rose Quarter project for I-5 to expand there, because there's certainly going to be a element of both ways affecting each other's transit.
I agree. I think you got to have a network that's communicating constantly back and forth. And we have the technology to do it, whether it's in-vehicle communications or whether it's smart infrastructure detecting issues and concerns and conveying it back to other parts of the infrastructure. So yeah, all of those things we're hoping to incorporate and be flexible enough to where this bridge can talk to someone in Washington, D.C. if they so desire to have the conversation.
Well, that also is the other question, but I'll wait for that because I just wanted to ask as a process, have we lost members to this committee already that we don't know about, that have either had to quit, move on for other reasons? Maybe an update of the list would be good for all of us to know who's still on the committee, who's not on the committee, who's new, that kind of thing. Lisa, maybe that's something that go to you.
Yeah, actually, go ahead. Sorry, Bill. Didn't mean to interrupt you.
It's because I remember after a kind of a heated discussion, I haven't seen Tom, what's his name, back again. Is he gone? Did he not? Did he leave the committee, or just other things come up? And not that I care not that I really want to get into what his private life's all about, but if we lose somebody, it'd be nice to know that we've lost somebody.
There's been actually quite a few members that we have lost. And so we are wanting to get through this phase and then wanting to get clear on our work plan in order to be able to make sure, there was a real a delicate balance that we wanted to make sure that we maintained with our organizational members and a Oregon and Washington balance. So we are in the process of trying to make sure that we've got the clear work plan so that we do have the ability to ask each of you, are you in for this next phase? Because we really asked you for a 2-year commitment. We're getting close to that time period. We want to make sure you have enough visibility to understand what we're asking you to say yes to. And we need to have representation from both sides of the river and from some of those real key organizations that continue to show up. And if those organizations have had some turnover, that we're able to ask them to bring a replacement. And not all of those organizations have had a chance to do that replacement. So really key point, Bill, and we've been having that conversation. So we do need to circle back around to this group in this fall time period.
Thank you. And just the last question, which you don't have to answer today, is who's going to be in the long term, who is going to be the owner of the bridge and have to be going back out to all these other entities again if they need funding to fix it or do that kind of stuff?
So the bridge will be jointly owned between WashDOT and ODOT.
Okay.
And one of the reasons for having tolls will be to pay for future costs, maintenance and operational costs for this bridge. So yeah, this will be a jointly owned bridge, as all of the bridges across the Columbia are jointly owned. There's operating agreements between the two states of who takes the lead. Right now, Oregon operates this bridge in total, but it is jointly owned, and Washington State pays them a annual stipend for their portion of the operational costs.
Great, thank you.
But I do want to have a selling point based on what Lisa said earlier. This next phase is going to be the fun phase. So we're going to be talking aesthetics. We're going to be talking community benefits, stuff where your expertise will be very much needed. So as you consider whether you want to extend your stay on this committee, know that you've made it through the toughest part, and the next part is going to be, I think, a lot more fun and engaging.
Robin?
I would be remiss if I didn't talk about funding and money. You all know that. We have $1 billion that we have to get from the state of Oregon. And we've got a new legislature coming in with many new legislators who have never been in the legislature before. We've got a new governor that's coming in, and it's not a done deal that we're going to get that $1 billion. I mean, and not that our role is to lobby or anything, but there's a whole group of people here who have spent the better part of 2 years getting to know this project very intimately and have different perspectives of the project too. And I think it's going to be really important that we have updates and figure out how we might use some of these voices to help educate, not necessarily lobby, but help educate a new legislature and a new governor as to how important this bridge is and how important that $1 billion is. That's not a small amount of money. And it's not going to be easy just to get that. We're fortunate that Washington is already committed to that. But we can have all the great plans in the world, and if Oregon doesn't come up with its $1 billion, we've got a different problem. So I think proactively we should be thinking, I mean, you guys know that that's one of the things that I'm doing, but we have a whole group of people here who are very engaged for the last 2 years, and we just need to figure out how to use them and how to use their voices appropriately.
So Robin, I like to echo your sentiment. With you guys being a part of the community advisory group, your voice is important to be heard. And once again, we're not asking anybody to lobby, but when you have those conversations, tell them what a complex project this is, and tell them how you have interacted and how your voice has been amplified in this process. So we appreciate any help. It's going to be a very tough slog. We're putting strategies together for how the program is going to move this conversation along, and it will be starting in August. We'll be having conversations with different folks around the entire state of Oregon so they can understand the importance of this program. So it's a very good point, Robin.
Jeffrey, I see your hand. And Marcus, I think you had your hand raised a few minutes ago. Did you take it down, or was that just, did I see it up and then?
You saw it up, fat
Okay.
fingers. It did not
Okay.
belong up, so thanks.
Okay, all right, okay. Jeffrey.
Well, good evening. I just want to start with a little preamble and just say thanks to Greg and anyone who's been involved in sorting through the ocean of nuances that go into the considerations for this bridge. It's pretty mind-boggling, and the stakes are high, and the opinions are strong. So just really appreciate the work that's being done to try and get the right bridge to please and help service the community best it can. So the other thing I want to say first is that I've unfortunately missed some of the recent meetings, including the tour. So I apologize in advance if my questions are off target or if something's already been shared. I want to piggyback on what Robin asked about with the funding piece, and then I have another question about lane capacity. The funding piece, I'm curious about the toll component. Is that, do we have analysis on what that's supposed to generate revenue-wise? I am a proponent for that kind of concept because we're going to be shifting more toward electric vehicles and away from fuel tax and so forth. But is that funding intended to just cover the operational maintenance and so forth of the bridge, or is it supposed to help cover, financing and so forth?
So right now, Jeffrey, we are looking at tolling as part of a three-legged stool of funding for this program. We're looking at Oregon and Washington, or what we call the local sources. We're looking at grant opportunities, both Federal Highway Administration and Federal Transit Administration grant opportunities. And finally, the delta between those two and the overall cost to be made up by tolling revenue. So that is a key part of the funding, and tolling will also, while paying off bonds that we will sell for this program, they will also in the future help pay for operational costs to keep this bridge in excellent shape as we move forward. But yeah, this is a complex endeavor, and thank you for your first comments. It's not been easy. And I've worked on a lot of tough projects, and this one is at the top of that list. So thanks for the comments.
Yeah, indeed. So then the other question was around lane capacity. And I'll just harken back to some of the comments that were made. I think one of them was by Metro around being sized right. And I got some input, or I rather read into that and some of the other input that, there's folks who don't want too many lanes because they want to, constrict traffic, which I disagree with. But, and then, like Vancouver, I think it was a Vancouver council, one of those Vancouver agencies basically was concerned about not having enough auxiliary lanes and so forth. So I guess, how is that being sorted in terms of prioritizing where we land, and how far down the road are we, no pun intended, in terms of arriving at a capacity design? So how many lanes, auxiliary lanes, et cetera?
So where we're at, if we get the last approval for the modified locally preferred alternative, we have agreed to study one auxiliary lane in each direction. And with that, putting all of the bells and whistles, all of the smart technology to make that one auxiliary lane in each direction work as well as possible. We know that we have size constrictions both upstream and downstream of this location. So adding more through lanes, we don't think would be beneficial for anyone. And then we start encroaching into Fort Vancouver with additional lanes. So right sizing is the right term, but making sure that what we build also serves this region going out 20, 25 years into the future. We're still moving traffic effectively and efficiently. So those are the things we're going to be diving into as soon as they say go and move into this supplemental environmental impact statement process. We'll be running models and looking at traffic flows and all of those things over the next few months. And hopefully, as we are into early to mid next year, start having some designs that reflect what we have seen and what will work going into the future.
Thank you, Greg. So CAG will have visibility on that and input as well?
Yep. We anticipate CAG's input will be as critical as ever on issues like that.
Okay, just one quick follow-up then. You mentioned to 25 years into the future, we're sitting on a bridge that's, I think, over 100 years old or so. What is the strategy? Are we aiming for a 25-year bridge or a 100-year bridge? Because I think that's a really important factor in terms of where we land on design.
So the life of the bridge, the physical structure that we build, we're building a 100-year bridge. It's once you start getting beyond 20 to 25 years, the reliability of traffic projections and modeling becomes very, very iffy. So you choose a window that's generally 20 to 25 years, and you project your traffic out to there, and you hope to build something that will still be efficiently moving traffic out in that time frame. We cannot project with technology, with changes in how people, the mobility of folks, how that will expand beyond that 20-year time window. It's just very iffy to look at anything beyond that with the models that we have.
Okay, that makes sense. Thanks so much for answering all my questions.
Oh, no, good questions.
This has been really helpful. We're at that point where I want to just check to see if we have folks that would like to provide public comment. Brent, have we had anyone sign up?
We do not have anyone signed up at this moment.
Okay. Given that we don't have anyone signed up, Michael, Ryan, Irina, Dina, we haven't heard from you. I just want to pause and just see if there is any feedback that you want to offer or any comments. You don't have to say anything, but I want to give you the space in case there is any comments that you'd like to make. Dina.
Yeah, I unfortunately couldn't make it to the tour. I work in East Portland, and so getting across the 205 bridge and down to downtown Vancouver, or coming through Portland and getting over the I-5 and into downtown is really difficult. But I was glad to hear that was a very fruitful endeavor, and I hope to be part of future tours, and look forward to continuing on in this effort, and hopefully someday see a bridge built that meets all of our varied communities' needs, including those of us that work under the bridge and not necessarily on the bridge. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Well, it looks like we have someone who would like to join and provide public comment. Why don't we go ahead and pull the slides up, and I'll go through the directions. If anyone else from the CAG would like to add any more comments, and we have some time at the end of the meeting, please let me know. But at this time, I'll go ahead and just make sure that anyone that would like to make public comment that needs a reminder about how to do that, that I go ahead and go through the directions. Verbal public comment will be welcome in the Zoom webinar during this time right now. We do offer the option for you to turn on your
would like to add
any more comments, and we have some time at the end of the meeting. Please let me know.
Hello.
But that's Karen, can you make sure that anyone would like
people are talking over each other
that needs a reminder about how to do that, that I go ahead and public comment.
Okay.
Welcome. Whoop. All right, great. Hearing yourself once is hard enough, but twice. Okay, so Karen, just one moment. Let me just go ahead and go through the directions real quick, and then I will welcome you into the space. So if you'd like to call in, please dial 1-669-900-6833. Go ahead and enter meeting ID. Okay, enter meeting ID 993-5459-6043. Passcode 674942. Dial *9 to raise your hand. After you're invited to speak, dial *6 to unmute yourself. We do have about 10 minutes, and I will be monitoring the time. So Jason, I think you'll have a clock ready. We will allow for 2 minutes per community member to share your feedback. This will not be a two-way dialogue, so we appreciate your comments, and we will follow up. So please feel free to share with us any feedback that you might have for the community advisory group. Next slide. Again, if there's interest in following up via email or phone call, directions to do so are listed in many different ways, but info@interstatebridge.org, or you can call and leave a message 360-859-0494, 503-897-9218. Please list CAG public comment so that we can provide that public comment to our community advisory group. Next slide. Okay. All right, it is that time. So Karen, I think that you are interested in providing us public feedback. So we're going to go ahead and make sure that you can access your microphone works and you're able to provide us feedback, and then we'll go ahead and start the clock as soon as. Okay, provide that public comment to our Karen.
Hey, Karen, you may need to turn YouTube off or pause YouTube for now.
All right, Karen, when you're ready, you could go ahead and unmute yourself and introduce yourself.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Hi, my name is Karen Gibson, and I live in the community that I like to call the I-5 adjacent impact zone of this project. And I'd like to understand who in this in the CAG actually represents the people who live within 100 feet of the I-5 bridge between 4th Plain and the bridge on the Vancouver side. I would like to understand what kind of outreach has been done to that community. I'd like to understand if anybody in the CAG received letters from the Interstate Bridge Project about their houses getting pictures taken of while they were doing surveys. I'd like to understand many different things about what the CAG is doing in terms of dealing with the community that lives directly next to the freeway. I was actually surprised to hear that that the Interstate Bridge Project is meeting with community members in Gresham, but I have yet to see a single meeting with the people who live directly next to the freeway here in Vancouver. So I like to understand how on the tour, you know, you guys took a tour. Did anybody kind of wonder about the people who live right next to the freeway and what's going to happen to them with all of this design? So this is kind of my questions, and I know you guys won't be answering them, but I will be following up with an email. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Appreciate that email so that we can follow up and answer your questions. Brent, anybody else that is signed up?
We do not have anyone else signed up for public comment.
Okay. All right. Was there any other members of the community advisory group that wanted to share any feedback? It looks like Martha, you have your hand up, and then I'll pass it over to you, Greg, and then over to Ed to wrap us up. So Martha.
Yeah, I thought the commenter had a good question about the communities that are immediately adjacent to the bridge on both sides of the river. So whatever your answer is, I would really hope that the rest of the CAG could hear it also or read it also.
Sure, absolutely. I think our community engagement team would be happy to provide information in terms of the outreach and the neighborhood association presentation. So there's a lot of that information available. So Jason, can you just make sure to put that into the notes? Thanks, Martha. Pass it to you, Greg.
I'd just like to echo Lisa's comments. We are not afraid to go anywhere. We'll talk to anyone who wants to talk about this program. So we have done presentations to neighborhoods in Vancouver, in Portland. So let us know and we will be there. So I just, once again, as we are on the precipice of a major milestone for the program, I want to thank you guys once again for your hard work and efforts that you've put in. I said, it's been, what is it, 18 months that you guys have been in the envelope with us. So I just want to thank you for all your hard work, and hopefully a number of you will be able to continue on with us on this journey as we try and get this important project built. So just want to thank you for your time and patience. And sometimes we miss the ball, but you know, it's not out of malice. It's out of, we've got so many balls that are in the air. Sometimes a few hit the ground. So, but thank you for your patience and your community spirit for this project. So I'll turn it over to Ed, who always has words of wisdom to wrap us up.
Thank you, Greg. You know, I think that at least for me, you echo my thoughts, and it was just hard for me to believe that it's been 18 months. And but I think there's a light at the end of this tunnel. There are more tunnels. Oh, that's a real pun in words. There's more opportunities. And but I hope that all of you who have been putting in so much time will really want to continue doing this as we go into what Greg called the fun times. I mean, the past hasn't been that bad, but we know the future is a lot brighter, and it should be a lot of fun. So I hope that those of you whose time will allow it, that you will stay with us so that you really can be there when it's not raining, but the sun is a little bit brighter. So thanks. I just want to thank you all again and again and again. And I think everything that you share with us, it does not go unnoticed. And we see where there are a lot of opportunities to get more community involvement and to get out to those communities. As Greg said, they'll go anywhere. So I look forward to that. And since we're not meeting next month, I hope that all of you will enjoy your time off and away. And if you're going to go somewhere on vacation, just sort of put this away for a while and enjoy your vacation and your families. So we'll see you in September. Have a good evening.
Isn't that a song?
Everybody.